So now that I've laid the foundation of the end result of who I am or who I've discovered myself to be through this activity, I think it's more than appropriate to delve into the beginning of me, and therefore we shall go to my intro. Um, I think the best way to describe it and keeping in theme with the music side of myself, which I absolutely love, is to start off with one of my favorite songs, and it's actually a country piece, and it goes like this. I am Dolores' granddaughter, the spinning image of my mother. And when the day is done, my daddy's still my biggest fan. I am clueless and I'm clumsy, but I have friends who love me. They know just where I stand. It's all a part of me. That's who I am. So I was born March 31st, 1988 in Windsor, Ontario. Go Leafs! I had a different experience growing up in Windsor because Windsor itself is such like a melting pot to where you see people of different races, different religions, different backgrounds. So when I came to the States in 1994, it was such a culture shock because I was always the only like odd black girl in my class. So I didn't have a lot of friends because, you know, people who are kids at that age are still kind of unsure of the unknown if you're different, it doesn't sit right with kids. So I kind of went to that awkward stage of just like trying to, again, with the first song I sang, trying to belong, trying to be a part of every social inner circle I could find myself associated with, possibly that would even let me in, let alone acknowledge my presence. So it was a bit of a struggle coming from Windsor to the States, and I think that was one of my biggest milestones because it was kind of my first introduction into a society where acceptance was a really big deal. Because in Windsor, it was more so, it wasn't so much as a culture shock to see people from different backgrounds because it was always in your face. And so when I came here, obviously I didn't have a lot of that, and so I kind of was introverted even more, afraid to often express myself, even to express my personal side of me. So therefore I adopted personality traits of other kids, which is like if they liked certain things, that would be my certain thing. Oh, you like pink? Well, hey, my favorite color is pink. My favorite color is purple. But in order to fit in, you take the character traits of other kids and you adopt them as your own so they can see that you're more normal. You fit into their world. You fit into the society that would otherwise think that you don't belong. I think another key milestone and what I've actually realized from this project is it's actually a bit sad when I come to think about it. So my father is from the French Islands, a small island called Dominica, Portsmouth. And he grew up poor. They did not have a lot. It's pretty destitute on that side of the island, you know. They're constantly bartering. They're constantly waiting for, you know, the tourist attractions to come in so they can afford to eat. Some of the houses are basically aluminum siding held together by mud and sticks. It's a very, very sad state to see. Not something that's publicized, you know, often. Like when you see Sandals Resort Jamaica, you think, oh, coconuts and sunshine. Well, there are parts on islands that are just very poverty stricken, and that's the specific part where he grew up in. It was very poverty stricken. They didn't have a lot of money, and so his parents essentially mortgaged like their lives so he could actually go to school and learn English, because his first language is something called patois, which is like French with broken English with a little bit of a made up language that's reserved for islanders, and his second language is French. So English is actually his third language. So English over in the islands is a very big deal, because if you learn English, that means that you have like this audacity of hope to where one day you're going to be something, you're going to be somebody. Like you can leave this island, go to the States, go to Great Britain, different parts of Europe, and actually accomplish something. So like learning English is like a very big deal over there. So when my father grew up with this, he's like, well, my parents gave so much for me to be so great. So when my kids, like when I have my kids, I'm gonna push them to be the greatest that they can be, because I came from nothing, and I want my kids to have everything. Therefore, I'm gonna focus all my energy in them so they don't have to live the childhood I've lived. And it's an interesting dynamic, because then you have my mother growing up who took the lessons from my grandmother, who was essentially a hybrid Stepford wife, to where, very docile, very accommodating to my grandfather, kind of, he's the head of the household, macho, what he says goes, there's no questioning his authority in the household, and even outside in public, especially in public in certain instances. So my mother grew up with that fear that she would pass it on to her daughters, because she saw a lot of that in herself. So she was of the mindset that her daughters are going to be strong. We're going to be independent. We're not going to conform to the status quo that, when you hit a certain age, you have to have married, you got to get married, you have to have kids. Your husband's the head of the household. He's the king of the castle. You have to do everything he says, because God forbid he divorces you, then, And it made me think of that song. By Blake Shelton's ex-wife. I can never remember her name, but it goes, word got around to the Barclays and the Baptists. My mama's phone started ringing off the hook. I can hear her now saying she ain't gonna have it. Don't matter how you feel, it only matters how you look. Like, that is the total embossment, like, of my grandmother. And I can see where my mother would be like, oh, I don't want to live that life. And I especially don't want my daughters, if I have any, to live that life. So when you couple that motivation to instill fierce independence in your daughters, coupled with a father who didn't have anything, who wants the best for their kids, who says, I'm going to focus all my attention to making them great. I'm going to be determined to push them to be great. You get a byproduct of me. To where it's like your personality was almost served to you on a platter, and there's no room for expression. You have to conform to the personality that your parents set out for you. And to do otherwise is the impression of failure, because you don't want to disappoint your parents, right? So I lived like that all through middle school and for the better part of high school, and it was so suffocating. I remember the first time that my dad told me he was disappointed in me, and I had gotten a B+ on the spelling test, and it was freshman year, and it was just like a random spelling test for English to see where we all at, and I just remember there's some words I just didn't spell correctly. I couldn't even tell you why. But I remember, he liked to see our tests, our grades. And I remember showing it to him, and I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, my world was going to end. I felt like my chest was going to explode. I just remember showing him the paper, and then he looked at it and looked at me and just shook his head like, I'm so disappointed. He handed it back to me, and he just walked away. And I just remember I felt awful. I felt like my world was coming down around me. And like, so from then, like, I became this machine. Like, I was always in the book. I alienated myself from relationships, from having close personal relationships with my friends that I turned into associates, because there's nothing more important than pleasing my father. Nothing more important to proving to my mother that I can be independent. Like, I can be all that you want me to be. Just give me time, give me the chance. And honestly, internally, I was dying on the inside. And it's a milestone for me, because it's vastly different from the person I am today. And I can recall a moment that I just broke, and I told myself that I can't do this anymore. You get to a point where you can't do it. It's so exhausting. It's so lifeless. And it was my 18th birthday, and I wanted to go to a party. I went to throw a party because you're 18, you're excited, you know, you're going off to college, and so I was really, I wanted to make new friends. I didn't have any real friends, and so I presented this idea to my dad and my mom, and oh my God, I even made a PowerPoint. That's how bad it was. I made a PowerPoint of reasons why I should have an 18th birthday party. So I put it all together. I was really excited. I got my sister to help me. And then I remember showing it. Like, I didn't even get past the intro. My dad was like, well, do you think you deserve a party? He's like, because you're not perfect. He's like, you haven't, what have you really done? I'm like, you got A's, but what have you really done? And like, I couldn't for the life of me at that moment figure out, like, why would you hurt me like that? Like, why would you say something like that? You know what I mean? Because it's, they're your parents. They're supposed to share in your happiness. They're supposed to enrich your dreams. And I didn't understand it then to what I understand now after doing all this. But what I knew in that moment is I'm never going to be good enough. I am never going to be good enough. No matter what I do, how many grades I pull in, what school I get accepted into, the scholarships I get, I am never going to be good enough for him. And what hurt me more is the fact that my mother never said anything. She just always stayed silent. And it wasn't always just a conceding, well, he's probably right. And it's just, that was a milestone. I broke in that moment. I broke, and I cried a lot. I cried myself to sleep, actually. And I remember waking up the next morning, and I told myself, you know what? Like, you don't have to be this person. Take this time, take this university time to be the exact opposite of who they trained you to be. Because that's exactly what it was. It was a trained personality, an inherited personality that I didn't ask for. I didn't get to grow up how I wanted to. I didn't get to even show the world who I was. I showed the world who my parents wanted me to be. But I didn't ever get to be me. So I think for me, it's important to come to that revelation and to know that about myself, because I know when I told my father that, he wasn't exactly happy. I had discussed with you in class. I shared the paper with him. And, he felt a little offended. And I think he took it more as a dig. But I told him, like, on my journey to self-discovery, I have to unearth all this stuff, because I'll never be happy. And I'll never be full unless I can come to terms with my past and how I came to be. And that is essentially the origin of me and what makes me me. And I think this assignment has led to a lot, actually, to this journey of self-discovery. And I like to explore more about the tests and the assessments that have gotten me to my conclusions.